that was 3rd May 2026. Grab your popcorn or your passport. From a government crypto heist to banks that may or may not have your back, the Xenophobic Blame Game is in full swing. Plus one ANC journey ends in refugee status, and yes, we're poking the untouchable Mandela. 32 years of decolonization, how's that going? Plus refugee news and tips, because survival needs strategy.
The government is coming after your crypto. Expropriation without compensation, only this time on your crypto.
Are you f***ing serious?
A new rule that could let the government stop any crypto owner at the border, demand their private keys, and force them to sell all of their cryptocurrency to the national treasury. Yes, really. If they refuse to hand over their keys, they could face up to 5 years in prison. Payment for the crypto would be in South African rand at a price that the government sets. This is written in an official government publication called Government Gazette 7375, released on April 17th. Public has until June 10th to comment on it.
South Africa already tried to regulate Bitcoin. A court told them they couldn't. So they went home, rewrote the rules from scratch, and came back with something far more aggressive. This is not a government catching up to technology. That is a government that lost in court and decided the answer was to change the law.
And I'm not going to focus on every single aspect because this is a massive document, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the most problematic ones. But you can see that this is the Capital Flow Management Regulations. It's the draft version of the policy. And I've highlighted some issues that I've seen that I think is going to cause a lot of headaches for the government if they decide to implement this. So over here, under restrictions on export of crypto, I'm just going to cut out the words that I don't need. A person may not, and then they say, except with the permission of National Treasury or an authorized person, take or send out or remove currency, crypto assets, gold or securities from the Republic. So you can't send the crypto to another exchange overseas because then you break the law. And we'll get to the fines and punishment at the end. And trust me, you want to sit down for that one. But also, you're not allowed to send, consign, give or deliver currency, crypto assets, blah, 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 to any person for the purpose of removing the currency, crypto, blah, 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 from the Republic. So if I want to give a tip to somebody in another country with the crypto that I have, then I'm breaking the law.
What it will effectively mean for ordinary South Africans is that they will no longer be able to self-custody their Bitcoin.
Farzim Ansani, the CEO of VALR, the country's largest crypto exchange, called the draft a step backwards that reminds him of economic controls from the apartheid era. Professor Stephen Sidley of the University of Johannesburg called it an alarming retreat from the country's goals of economic freedom. The Blockchain Association of South Africa has pointed out that the plan allows the government, not judges, to freeze assets, violating not just the rights to property and to remain silent, but also the right to fair administrative action. A court challenge is almost certain if this passed as written. But history shows that even if people win initial procedural victories, the government often comes back with a corrected legal document and achieves its goal eventually.
Seem communist.
I mean, well, it is communism. It's full-blown communism. And it just shows you how much these dictator-like, tyrannical communist government hate when you have your own wealth.
This is such a crock of shit.
Be sure to speak up and speak out and tell the government where they can shove this draft regulation, because as it stands right now, it is very clear that it's unconstitutional and it's an overreach by the government coming after people's money because they have to plug more holes because of a lot of people leaving this country because they don't want to live under these discriminatory laws and where they are excluded when it comes to getting a job, but when it comes to taking your money, they are the very first in line to do so. It is absolutely absurd.
But Tony, what do you think the net effect of this of this proposed legislation is?
It tells me that the desperation of corrupt governments and individuals is reaching all-time highs. and that they are literally running out of time and options and are hoping anything sticks. So the more extreme the headline is, because the more petrified they are. And the power, to make this go away is in the hands of the people, no matter where they are, whether it's South Africa or any other jurisdiction. If you understand Bitcoin, you understand that all these headlines you can throw in the garbage, because they are completely meaningless and unenforceable unless you allow yourself to be influenced by this rubbish. Bitcoin was created for the separation of money and state. You cannot stop peer-to-peer transactions, right? They can say all they want, make it illegal all day and all night. They can't stop it. And so as long as folks understand this, hold on to self-custody, and perhaps even consider leaving, then nothing changes for them.
Self-custody is not paranoia. It is the logical conclusion of understanding what these regulations are designed to do. The private key in your possession is the only Bitcoin that a border agent, a court order, or a rewritten capital control law cannot touch.
It's a valuable future. Believe me. Don't destroy it. Protect it.
Violent crimes down, cue applause. Meanwhile, fraud's up, quietly robbing you in HD. Nearly 98,000 scams, 1.9 billion rand gone, and AI's now your scammer's unpaid intern. Banks? Let's just say it's complicated. We join Rebecca Davis and Rian Ru as they unpack the chaos, because nothing says plot twist like your money ghosting you.
It may not always feel like it, but the crime situation in South Africa is, at least according to police statistics, tentatively improving. Murders down, robbery is down, sexual offences are down, car theft is down. Every major crime category in the country, other than kidnapping, is decreasing. And then there's commercial crime, which is exploding. Cases have doubled in a decade. So why isn't this a topic of national discussion? This is the story of billions of rands disappearing from ordinary South Africans, from pensioners, small business owners, retired teachers. It's a story about a system that seems almost perfectly designed to keep that theft invisible.
The reason this crime stays invisible is not an oversight. It is, as I'll show you, the result of a system that works very well, just not for you.
When you ask the police for a breakdown of commercial crime, what does it include, who's being targeted, where it's coming from, the data doesn't exist. SAPS confirmed this to us directly. The Hawks, who handle complex cases, published a breakdown of commercial crime cases in their most recent annual report, using 18 bewildering subcategories, including fraud with a stolen petrol card, while a separate category, labeled simply Other Fraud, shows losses of 396 billion rand from just over 1,000 cases in a single year. To put that into global perspective, that figure exceeds the FBI's total internet crime losses for the entire United States in the same year, 2024, for a country with an economy roughly 40 times smaller than the US. We asked the Hawks to confirm that number wasn't a typo. They confirmed it was accurate.
That should be a national scandal on its own. Instead, it just sits there in a spreadsheet.
The National Financial Ombud, the last resort for fraud victims, finds in favor of the banks 4 out of 5 times. Now, there's a public perception that comes up again and again when fraud victims describe what happened to them. They'll say, someone at the bank must have been involved. The banks deny this emphatically and consistently. No employee can unilaterally override security controls, they say. But court records over the past few years alone tell a more complicated story. There was the former FNB employee sentenced to 5 years in prison after using her own credentials to divert all OTPs from a 68-year-old customer's account to herself, then using a second card she'd created to drain 245,000 rand over 3 months. There were 14 people, including a former Nedbank forensic investigator, someone whose job was to catch fraud, who were arrested in connection with an alleged 157 million rand scheme involving the redirection of funds from accounts already under investigation. Former employees of ABSA and Standard Bank appear in similar cases, and these are the cases that were detected and prosecuted. The question of how many weren't is unanswerable because the data doesn't exist and the institutions that hold that evidence won't share it.
And here's where the bank's story becomes very convenient. Across the industry, the standard line is that digital fraud happens because customers compromise their own credentials, not because bank systems are breached. In other words, it's your fault.
Bank fraud is effectively made the customer's problem, not the bank's. And while bank executives say that banks are often unfairly villainized and are really doing their best, it's hard not to forget that last year alone, the top 4 South African banks recorded combined headline earnings of over 135 billion rand. What we're left with, ultimately, is a situation where commercial crime in South Africa is clearly out of control, but the hawks, the NPA and the police don't even seem to have a shared understanding of how to define the crime category, let alone what's driving it. The criminal justice system is clearly doing almost nothing meaningful to stem the problem, while the institutions most affected, like banks, have a really powerful incentive to keep as quiet as possible about it. This lack of transparency isn't incidental to the problem, it is the problem. And until someone is required to change that via legislation or public pressure, ordinary South Africans will keep losing billions annually from their bank accounts.
Now the natives are revolting as thousands march across South Africa, blaming immigrants for everything short of load shedding, jobs, healthcare, schooling, housing, apparently all stolen in one heist. Sky's Yusra Elbagir is on it, alongside Al Jazeera and YouTube's finest, Professor G, Colonel Chris Wyatt, Stefan Z.A., and Rian Ru, because nothing says calm debate like the internet with opinion.
A warrior formation for a war on foreigners, marching across South Africa's cities to warn African immigrants here that it's time to leave.
I'm unemployed. There's no employment. You can't find anything.
Now we are focusing on the illegal foreign nationals. Yes, which are black Africans. That's why we are focusing on illegal foreign. Let me tell you, we go to a hospital, they are illegal foreigner occupying a hospital. You go to school, they are illegal foreigner.
Anyone just wakes up in the morning and decides that they're having problems in their own country. Oh, let me look for greener pastures, and it's South Africa. And if we don't say anything about it, or if we say something about it, we're told that it's black people. This is not a skin color thing. It's about us protecting our country, which is a sovereign state. We love our African brothers and sisters, but it's time now that they also fix their own countries for their own children and their own future.
The chickens are coming home to roost. A long-standing problem in South African society is rearing its ugly head yet again. The arrogance of South Africa's leaders and its foreign policy have been gobsmacking, to say the least, over the past 15 months. But now, the arrogant get their own comeuppance.
Why this specifically, why these xenophobic riots actually terrify me, is because they're allowed to happen. And some other videos that were sent to me were of South African blacks punching or slapping Nigerians, tearing down doors, physically assaulting and brutalizing people. Well, if they're allowed to get away with this, then what is the fine thread holding these groups from dressing up as Zulu warriors and chieftains, who culturally have a disturbing history of murder and violence and war and destruction? What's keeping them from simply flipping the switch and now actively doing this against Afrikaners and other people of European descent and other ethnic minorities in South Africa? These videos are proof that it's not just Afrikaners, it's not just whites, which is why the refugee program is not just for white people, as the leftist media likes to claim.
There are reports coming out that a lot of foreigners actually got caught by the mob protesting, and that some beatings were taking place, not necessarily in Joburg, but all around South Africa. There is a rising of tensions. Now, the protest, as you can see on your screen, has been joined by thousands of people, and there were all sorts of secondary protest actions that were happening and sort of joining up with the main group as they were going through the streets. The protest itself has been organized by Jacinta Zuma, And a lot of political parties, including Action SA, have joined into this protest action. And the main requirement, the main request from these protesters is a tighter border control and the mass immigration or mass deportation of illegal immigrants in South Africa.
But if you look closely, there is a much more disturbing pattern emerging in South Africa. The breakdown of law and the lack of enforcement regarding immigration is only one side of the coin. If you look at the treatment of white South Africans, you see a different kind of state-driven instability. It isn't a vacuum of law. It is an active, systemic targeting. While the state appears absent when it comes to policing our borders, it appears incredibly present and incredibly efficient when it comes to implementing policies that target a specific segment of the population. We see it in the push for expropriation without compensation. We see it in the way the Bella Act threatens the autonomy of schools. We see it in the racial quotas in university admissions, where, for some, the chance of entry is almost non-existent. We see it in the way the very history of the country is being erased through the renaming of towns and streets. And the most telling evidence isn't found in a protest or a news report. It's found in the ANC's own Freedom Day statement. In this document, the ANC claims to be celebrating 32 years of non-racialism. They use the word to wrap themselves in the cloak of equality. But then, look at the very next paragraph.
The ANC will expedite transformation, equity, diversity, inclusivity, and economic transformation by implementing the National Health Insurance Act, the Employment Equity Amendment Act, the Expropriation Act, the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, and other progressive laws.
Let's call that what it is: racism by the ANC. When you label anyone who challenges these policies, anyone from a civic group to a local business owner, as an anti-transformation proponent who is destroying the nation, you are no longer practicing non-racialism. You are practicing the politics of exclusion.
President Ramaphosa says they're going to stop it and those who do it will be punished. But we've heard this rhetoric before and nothing comes of it. South Africa is a hostile place to foreign nationals, particularly if they're black. And it's not coming from the white folks or the color folks or the Indians. It's coming from black South Africans. That's where it originates, and that's where it needs to stop. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi, cheers.
South African situation is very, very dangerous.
Hey you, staring at the screen, looking confused. I see you. Behold, Be Patient, the official drink of South African refugees. That rainbow can of pure, concentrated patience. To survive the refugee grind of persecution and endless waiting, nothing beats a case of Be Patient. Stand the test of time with Be Patient. Perfect for lasting longer than ANC SOBs or Juliarson is economic freedom fuckers. Deadpool out.
A former ANC MP packs his bags, boards a plane and claims refugee status in the US because apparently freedom now comes with a departure gate. He calls it a symptom of national failure. Others call it awkward. Either way, it raises a spicy question. Is South Africa a shit-old tin pot dictatorship with marketing or what?
When a former ANC Member of Parliament gets on a plane and claims refugee status, it's not gossip. It's a flare gun fired into the night sky. I'm not here to rehabilitate Lawrence Macdonald. I'm here to talk about the machine that produces stories like this, and why you should be boiling with anger. Lawrence E. Macdonald was inside the ANC for years. He served as a Member of Parliament from 2019 till 2024. He resigned from the party last year, and now he's left South Africa and taken up refugee status in the United States. He says he arrived in Florida on the 1st of May, Freedom Day for some. That irony cuts deep, because for the ANC and its supporters, Freedom Day is like a victory lap. But if you're in the minority, packing your life in a suitcase and applying for refugee status, the day has little meaning. Far from freedom, he wrote on X, "Leaving the country of my birth was not easy. It was painful, heartbreaking, and symbolic. I walked away from a place I loved deeply, but where daily life had become a struggle for safety, dignity, and opportunity." He's describing what millions already live, a state that can't or won't deliver safety, dignity, and opportunity. A government that treats freedom like a logo on a billboard, while the road underneath you turns to potholes and dust. And then he says that in America he finally felt welcome, safe, and treated like a human being. Now I can already hear the excuses, people reaching for their favorite little box to shove this story into. Oh, but it's just this group, or it's just politics. No. This is a former ANC MP, white, yes, who served in Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Transport. He's not the convenient cardboard cutout, someone to wave around. And it's not only one community looking for the exit. Reports indicate that more than 5,000 South Africans have taken this route on grounds of racial persecution, including some coloured South Africans too. So spare me the lazy framing. Macdonald has also been outspoken about what he calls ANC racial laws, and last year he made headlines for another reason. He was one of the former MPs who had to be evicted from heavily subsidised parliamentary housing in Cape Town. If people are leaving and calling it refuge, what does that say about the real South Africa behind the speeches? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if there is someone you think needs to hear this, do share this video with them.
Alright, grab your moral compass. This might sting. We're not doing the polished hero edit, we're opening the dark mode version. Umkhonto wastes his way, murder and mayhem, and some very uncomfortable facts. Turns out history has forgotten a side of Mandela that nobody talks about. So yeah, unifying icon by day, controversial past by night. Let's see what liberation really cost. Spoiler alert, it ain't cheap and downright murky.
Let's discuss Nelson Mandela today. Let's not discuss the international statesman, the international hero. Let's discuss Mandela, the terrorist communist, and what he did to South Africa. Let's ease into this with this video of Nelson Mandela singing about killing all the white people and shooting them with AK-47s and blowing them up with bazookas. No, I'm not making that up, it's real. Here he is with the Umkhonto Isizwe, which is the militant arm of the ANC that he created himself. We're going to talk about that later because it's very pivotal to this video. He's standing next to a very well-known member, very influential member of the South African Communist Party, Ronnie Kasrils. And they're singing, and I'm going to tell you exactly the lyrics of the song. It goes like this. We members of Umkhonto, this is that militant group, are prepared to kill all the Boers. We all know Boers are white people in South Africa, the white farmer. Get on the roof and tell them that when I hit the Boer, my mother becomes happy. Whites and Boers are troubling our parents at home. We're going to hit them with our AK-47s and bazookas. So, you know, this is after Nelson Mandela had been released from prison. This is after apartheid was already over. It's before he took over as president. But there he is singing about killing all the white people. You may not be aware of this, but Nelson Mandela was only removed from the USA terrorist watch list in 2008. Now, he was on that list for a reason. You see, back in 1961, him and a very well-known communist, this white guy that you see over here, his name is Joe Slovo, he's actually from the Soviet Union, ended up in South Africa and was the leader of the South African Communist Party. Him, Walter Sisulu, and Nelson Mandela started an organization called Umkhonto Isizwe.
There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people. And I think the time has come for us to consider, in the light of our experiences in this stay at home, whether the methods which we have applied so far are adequate,
And this was the militant arm of the ANC. Basically a guerrilla group that was there to cause terror, a terrorist group. And they started by blowing up infrastructure with bombs, you know, targeting things like power stations and transformers, or railway lines, train stations. But, of course, they didn't stop there. Just like every other communist terrorist organization, they went after civilians next, soft targets. And this included, of course, shopping centers, bars, sports stadiums, crowded public areas like Church Street. They even bombed a chain of fast food restaurants. Not only that, though, of course, they laid anti-tank mines in rural areas.
In June 1986, South Africans watched in horror as a woman got burned to death on television. Makis Kosana's very public necklacing started a whole new trend. But few people know about the events which led to this killing frenzy in Duduza on the East Rand.
This was Winnie Mandela's words. She said this in 1986. With our boxes of matches and our necklaces, we shall liberate this country. The black people inside of the townships, they'd burn them to death in excruciating, barbaric manner. So nobody ended up winning. And yet everybody looks at Mandela as if he's some kind of hero. If I'm to be pragmatic about this, I can't blame Nelson Mandela for the downfall of South Africa. It's not fair to put so much on one man. But I also can't praise him for being some kind of a savior or a hero. Because he is a communist terrorist. He was a communist terrorist. And maybe a communist terrorist who mellowed a bit in his old age. I'm not trying to stoke any kind of animosity with this video. I simply want to share my experiences and let everybody out there know exactly why it is that I no longer live in the country of my birth and never plan to return.
Ah, yes. 32 years of progress, where roads become obstacle courses and the lights go out like a Black Friday special nobody ordered. Corruption's basically a national sport. Turns out mismanagement isn't a strategy, it's a demolition plan. From promise to potholes, welcome to the slow-motion urban decay sequel nobody asked for.
Let's take a look at this little house on the corner here. I mean, that looks fairly alright. Let's take a look at what it looks like now. Yep. You see, this is decolonisation in action. 10 years is all it took to change this into this. And to change that into this. And to change this into that. This is the result of communism, corruption, and decolonisation. This is, of course, my country, South Africa. If you lived there and you were white, well, you're the cause of all the problems. And you're the reason why this street looks like it does. And you're the reason why the murder rate is so high and South Africa is the rape capital of the world. And you're the reason why it's falling apart. So how is it that the richest country in Africa, that is responsible for the first heart transplant and advances in medical science like the MRI, a country that had nuclear weapons, the best infrastructure in Africa, the richest, the most gold and diamond reserves. So what made this country that was powerful and advanced and rich and first world turn into the rotting, hollowed corpse that it is today? Well, the easy answer and the quickest answer is the ANC took over the government and then the country went to shit. Simple. Now, of course, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of complicated history. There's the whole apartheid. There's the whole white minority being in charge of the entire country and running the entire country. There's colonization. All of these things, of course, is a big and convoluted history. And I'm not here to try and defend any of the bad actions of the past. But I'm also not here to defend any of the bad actions of the present. Because when you hand over stewardship to an incompetent and corrupt communist organization, well, of course your country's going to go to shit. But let's stop talking about it and let's look at it. What we're going to do is I'm going to take a look, because in Google Maps it has this very interesting thing where you can click see more dates. And you can go all the way back as far as 2010 seems to be the first time they did this. So I'm going to click 2010. And I mean, that is 2010, Grootstraat, I should say. Sorry, that's how you say it in Afrikaans. And it doesn't look amazing. But compared to the most recent one, which is 2023, I mean, it looks a hell of a lot better. I'll tell you that much. Now we've got, I mean, look, razor wire all over everything. What date is this? This is 2013. So let's have a quick look. We went from kind of clean, kind of nice, a bunch of people ambling around. That you expect that in Johannesburg. Now, by the way, guys, just for the record, I left South Africa finally in 2006. I went on my business trip to China 2005, late 2005. Early 2006 is when I left, and I never went back, except for one time for a visa run. And here's the thing. This is a few years after I left. Not that many. 4 years. And this is what it looked like. Let's take a look at 2013. I mean, obviously they tried to prevent people from destroying this castle-looking building, which I have no idea what that thing is, to be honest. Let's go to 2015. I mean, it's starting to look a little rougher, but it's still salvageable, maybe. 2017. Looks like the razor wire started to get stolen and trash just started to line up everywhere. Let's go to 2022. Yeah, looking pretty trashy and rough. And 2023 looks like another fence. Okay, all right. Interesting. Now, of course, we're here to see what it looks like right now. If I click see latest date, we can see. Let's continue on down Grootstraat and see what we can see. When I get to a particularly rough-looking area, I will, for instance, just here, we're still in that same castle thing. Let's just quickly go back to 2010 and see what it looks like. And although it's still not great, that's a huge difference. So let's stop this garbage. When people start talking about decolonialism, tell them to take a hike and maybe offer them an olive branch and say, you know what? Instead of you trying to tear down systems that exist that work, how about you help me maintain them? How about we build them up together? How about we improve them together? How about we work together?
All right, buckle up, Buttercup. News and tips for refugees. First up, Americana's survey, because you need answers. Next, Chris is back, because the internet said so. Meanwhile, scammers are lurking. Yep, villains with Wi-Fi. So guard your info like it's the last slice of pizza and keep your data tighter than airport security. And finally, Ohio's driver's licence saga. Pricey, painful, so the Colonel's gone straight to the governor. Oh look, actual useful stuff. The Americanas are on a mission to improve US rap for everyone. Yeah, that means you too. No hiding. Help them help you by smashing that survey. Relax, it's quick, like shorter than your coffee break quick. Head to www.americanas.com/survey. Do the thing. Future you will be mildly impressed.
Wow, what can I say? I made a video earlier today just out of frustration, and I said that maybe it's time to step away from things. I wasn't saying I was stepping away and wasn't a threat, but it really evoked a lot of responses from people, and some overwhelmingly wonderful and emotional ones, including people I've met in South Africa, many of whom are still patiently waiting for an opportunity to come to America despite having put a PRM email and a statement of interest and an intake questionnaire. They're still hanging in there after 14, 15 months. And so my thoughts and prayers are to them who want to come over. But I have to say that in my chat, someone mentioned something about Adidas, and I missed the point entirely. Apparently there's a group that calls themselves the Adidas now, and I said I don't like Adidas because I don't care for that damn bird. But what a heartwarming thing. It's just, I gotta say, the group, they call themselves Adidas, so my mistake on that, I didn't understand that during the live stream. But thank you for the outpouring. A lovely family who put themselves in cowboy dress to look American, which is pretty cool. 3 lovely kids. It just, so many messages, and literally, I mean, someone else just sent me a thing with 50 messages from the Adidas group alone, And then once again, my phone is shut down. It's not receiving messages from numbers that I don't know. So if you've never been in contact before and haven't saved your name in my address book, I'm not getting your messages right now because my WhatsApp account has been overwhelmed, much like it was in South Africa last year and a couple times since I've been here. It just they do that. There's too many messages, and if it's not in your phone book, they won't. WhatsApp shuts it down. So, listen. Thank you so much. But even more of this idiocy is turning up. Came across something, or I'm not even looking at this stuff people are sending to me. Someone put a thing and claimed that I'm on X telling people to abandon their leases. And no, that's pure poppycock and slander. I never said any such thing. Instead, I told somebody in Ohio to do that. I never said any such thing. I didn't have any private conversations with any. My meetings in Ohio, everyone that was present was in the room. I didn't have a private meeting with anybody in Columbus. In Cleveland, my only other meeting in Ohio, over 50 plus people were there. I had no private conversations. I stood around everybody. No discussions about anybody about abandoning anything. That's just pure lies. And so it just shows you how evil and demented some people are, that they'll commit any sin against even the most credible and honest of people because they're just nasty bastards who really are starved for attention, or they just really, maybe I'm harming their effort to fleece people money. I don't know what's going on. But thank you all so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Nice to get some of that love back that I've been giving to everyone else, and I really, really do appreciate it. You know, the Brew did this all big favor by naming the audience the Wyatt Army, and I didn't like that, but I've kind of grown on me now. It's grown on me. Thanks, everyone.
Afrikaner refugee scams, because nothing says modern horror like AI interns faking alphabet salad agencies. ICE or USCIS won't call demanding money like shady robot telemarketers. Verify everything, trust your caseworker, and don't spill your info. Legal help exists, but it's pricey. And remember, Professor G has your back.
So I hope this helps. The long and short of this is an Afrikaner refugee here in the United States was contacted by someone claiming to be an ICE agent or an ICE officer and said that they have a complaint or a file on their desk because this individual did not update their address with USCIS. And they immediately did the correct thing. They went to their case manager, their case officer, they asked about this, and they discovered quickly that it's a fraud. Let me be clear, guys. ICE is not going to contact you. The government, USCIS, ICE, all the alphabet soup, DHS, all these organizations that are involved in immigration and customs enforcement, all of these enforcement and removal operations, all of these alphabet soups, they're not just going to call you out of the blue and say there's a problem with something you did or didn't do, especially not an ICE agent. And remember, ask them for identification. Do you have identification? You know, what is it? Let me call you back. Give me a call back number. Don't be afraid. No one is going to come to your door, kick it in, and take you today. You have legal status to be here as a refugee. And even if you did something incorrect, yes, you do have to update your address. I'm sorry, and backtrack a little bit. Sorry, I'm having an ADD moment. I drank too much coffee from the Buy Me a Coffee people. But what they actually said was that they had to change their A number or something ridiculous to do with the A number. A numbers never change. That's not a thing. You don't update it. The A number that you get is what stays with you, throughout the entire process of going from refugee to LPR to U.S. citizen. All right. So if you get calls from organizations who claim to be, or people who claim to be ICE or USCIS, you ask for verification. You ask for a callback number, a contact number. You ask to see paper documentation of what they're talking about. They should be able to send it to you. You don't give out any information, you don't give any money, and you don't do anything until you confirm it with your caseworker, your case manager, and those people directly responsible for you. You know that all of you can, of course, email me, but I want to put out there, if I get like 100 emails from people saying ICE is contacting them, I don't have the time, guys. I apologize. Like I said, I hope this channel gets to the point where this is what I can do to continue to help Afrikaners come here throughout the Trump administration, of course, after, and to promote and support an Afrikaner autonomous state in South Africa. That's what I hope to do. That's what I feel my calling is. I would love to be able to do that, but at the present time, I can't. I have to work my two other jobs as well. So, but again, you'd be like, hey, I want to speak to an attorney. Can I call an immigration attorney? Do not give any information, any money, anything to any organization, regardless of who they claim to be, until you check with your caseworker first, and then you get callback numbers. You ask the CIDs if they're there personally to talk to you, all of that sort of stuff. CYA, cover your ASS. All right? Those are definitely scams, and many of you are going to be targets of scams because they know you're in a country that you're not from, you're not familiar with, you're afraid. The scammers are also reading all of the reports. They're reading the news. They're seeing what's going on. They're seeing that many Afrikaner refugees are in bad conditions and aren't happy. Well, if you're in a bad condition, you're worried about, whether the roof is going to cave in or there's roaches on the floor, then you might fall for a scam. So they're taking advantage of that. So be careful. There are scammers out there.
Now, Ohio's driver's license rules for refugees are a pain in the you-know-where because apparently experience doesn't count. Enter the Caped Crusader, Colonel Chris Wyatt, heading straight to the governor to fight the paperwork. He's pushing to ease financial burdens, skip unnecessary driver's ed, and let skilled drivers actually drive instead of starting from zero. Oh, he is my hero.
That means 24 hours of classroom or online learning, 8 hours behind the wheel with an instructor, and 50 practice hours with an adult and 10 at night.
All of this is expensive. I just had my middle son go through it, and I think I paid over $800 for all of it. So out of reach for many people.
This is addressed to Governor Mike DeWine. As a 41-year resident of Ohio and a combat veteran with over 36 and a half years military service, I'm deeply concerned about a recent change in Ohio law. Specifically, as of June 30th, 2025, individuals with refugee status are issued a limited term license and are subject to mandatory training requirements before they can take their driving exam. The key amended requirements for refugees are mandatory driver training, practice hours, limited term license. While I understand the intent to ensure safe driving on the Buckeye State's roads, the amended standards are broad-based and deeply discriminatory. Additionally, they are wholly unnecessary, or at least should be applied with more exemptions. On February 7, 2025, President Trump opened the door for South African refugees to escape racial persecution and to come to America. This law is unnecessarily impoverishing recent arrivals from South Africa, preventing them from finding timely employment. Many already face unwarranted bigotry and abysmal service from money-grubbing refugee agencies located in Ohio. South African refugees have fled state-sponsored racial persecution. Nearly all adult South Africans are experienced drivers who have lived in what was, until recently, a first-world country. As tourists to the United States, you would honor their South African driver's license while visiting Ohio. Why does Ohio not accept their existing driver's licenses and permit them to convert their driver's licenses to a state-issued license like the other 49 U.S. states do? Ohio has made exemptions for refugees from Canada, France, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. However, these countries are not the origin of refugees. Also, why would Ohio accept a license from a refugee who fled to Germany and then came to America shortly afterwards, with no previous first world licensing and driving experience, yet refuses to allow South Africans with hundreds of thousands of miles of safe driving experience convert their existing driver's license? Additionally, this requirement does not apply to residents of other states who move to Ohio. Refugees are afforded the same rights as Americans, except for voting, on arrival in the United States. Imposing this burden is not equal protection under the law as intended in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Ohio's Constitution would also appear to protect against disparate treatment of Ohio residents, which they are. Article 1, Section 2 in the Bill of Rights, adopted in 1851, would appear to be applicable in this circumstance. Specifically, individuals in similar situations are treated equally under the law, prohibiting arbitrary or intentional discrimination by government actors. This would appear to be intentional discrimination against South Africans. The driver training now imposed on South Africans consumes 30% or more of the limited federal grant money, which is $2,000, which a South African refugee receives. Those funds are intended to pay for housing and food, not excessive driver license training expenses. Loss of employment owing to their skin color in South Africa has left many of these South Africans bereft of resources on arrival in Ohio. Imposing this burden means $600 or more in unnecessary expenses for families with educated, experienced adults who need a driver's license to find employment. Effectively, the Ohio legislature has now ensured that many recent arrivals will remain on public assistance rather than rapidly finding employment. The law is counterproductive when it comes to South African refugees. Governor DeWine, I respectfully implore you issue an executive order, if appropriate, to waive this onerous requirement or push the Ohio legislature to pass an amendment to alter this unfortunate situation. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Well, you survived the week, which is more than the last AI voice. I guess you can go home now. Shit. Sorry, I forgot you are a refugee.